Welcome along to the football show. We are busy today. There's lots going on in the world of football. A little bit off the beaten track, we are going to tell you about Fergal Curran. He's an Offaly-born physio making waves in the professional game. Dan McDonnell has been speaking to him. Rangers fans dressed as Santa cause carnage in Glasgow. Celtic win the League Cup on penalties. Shamrock Rovers are doing amazing things. Sixth in the Europa Conference League table. They are unbeaten in 5 games, 3 wins, 2 draws. Really remarkable. They are at Stamford Bridge on Thursday. So all of that to come. Gary Breen will join us as well. Dan McDonnell, hello.
Hi, Joe.
Let's talk about events at the Etihad yesterday.
Manchester United have won it, and it's another defeat for Manchester City, this time in the Manchester derby. Diogo Dalot drops onto his back, clenched fists in the air, and the Manchester United players, 1-0 down until the 88th minute, have just produced their biggest win so far under Ruben Amorim's management. Victory in his first Manchester derby.
So a late, great infusion of drama into what was otherwise a fairly tawdry, mid-table kind of a game.
Yeah, like, you know, I mean, this is the problem now with watching football on TV generally, I find anyway. And this is nothing new. This is like society, your attention span. Like, you just drift, even if you're really interested in the game.
Sorry, say again?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like, you know, there's a lot going on around the house, and you know, Christmas is getting close, and there's things going on, and it's on. But you're sort of thinking, yeah, it's just, you're sort of passively engaged with it, like, and but it's because the game was meandering. Although I was watching it at 1-0, just thinking, even City now at the moment, it's just not impressive. Like, I don't have any stake in the game. I don't support any English team, but like, and the whole City thing, obviously the funding, etc. But I still really enjoy watching them. I've always enjoyed watching their games, even sometimes when people would say it's that, like, the sterile domination or whatever, that sometimes they can be in such control that it may not be thrilling. But actually, I still find a lot of the time I have enjoyed watching them. But yesterday I was like, yeah, it's just a bit stodgy, isn't it? This is just really stodgy. And I think we spoke, maybe was it last week, or sorry, the week before, when they'd beaten Forest. And obviously in that game they were still quite open. And then with the Juventus game during the week, which I watched, which actually they played really well for a while in that game, but then they got done so easily on the counter that you were sort of watching it, so, they're trying to shut up shop a little bit here, and they're just trying to, avoid that. But even then, it's like you're acting against the natural instincts of the side. Like, this is, you know, Grealish comes on, and they were just sort of okay. They were just sort of seeing it out. So it's hard to feel a man about sympathy for them, even though it was a spectacular smash and grab. And I don't know how you look at it from the United perspective, really. I don't know what, I thought Amorim probably struck a decent tone afterwards about that. I'm sure we'll hear that in sort of due course. But like, in some ways, it's like maybe anyone could have smashed and grabbed them or sucker punched them in that way. I mean, obviously United are such a captivating story because, like, they're the biggest club in the world, or, you know, the biggest talking point in the world. But to me, like, it was just a City implosion. And yeah, Ahmad was brilliant, but I sort of feel like there's a lot of teams in the Premier League might have done that as well, might have capitalised, and might have capitalised on that in the same way. I mean, I know they had the Feyenoord game even, and like, mad things have just happened to them this season, and it really is. I didn't quite believe it, but yeah, there is a sort of a terminal look about it at this stage. You know, I did a piece at the start of the season thinking, I thought next year would really catch up in City. I think all the warning signs were there with the Euros, then the World Club Cup this year that they're going into. It's a long year for a lot of older, tired players. I just thought they might get through this year, and I did feel there might be a little bit of a drop off, but it's happened. Yeah,
I've been slow to believe as well. And every time I look at the team sheet, I think, well, they'll win today. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, you brought on Kovacic. Okay, De Bruyne goes off, and I mean, Núñez has obviously just met himself the story now. You just can't believe the mistake, and the crime was bad, but the cover up was just way worse. It was just like the cover up was absolute spectacular stuff. But yeah, there's almost this collective thing. Like, you have this image of, like, whatever about Pep's interviews and what he has to say, like just him with his hands on his head on the sidelines, quite powerful sort of image of, like, yeah, you don't even you don't have the answer to everything. You can't explain this because they were like nicely in control of the game, just not impressive. But it's a derby, it's a big game, even though the opposition are what they are, at the moment, like see it out. So there's obviously a whole different United strand to this and what it means for them and momentum, and I completely get that point. But I don't know if I'm expecting them to be brilliant next week because of this. It's more of a City thing for me.
Yeah, well, let's hear from Bernardo Silva, who was speaking afterwards, and in particular he was focused on just the way they gifted the game to United in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, we totally deserved what happened, because it doesn't mean at this level, if it's a game or two, you can say that you're being lucky or unlucky. If it's 10 games, it's not about that. And if minute 87 of the game in a derby, you're winning 1-0, corner for your team, and the ball ends up in your keeper with a penalty for them, my friend, if you make these kind of stupid decisions when it's 3 minutes or 4 minutes to go, you deserve to pay for that.
So that's fairly honest, really, and it's that last 5 minutes allied to a fairly, as you said, stodgy performance generally. It's not like we were scintillating, we were back to our best and then had a bad 5 minutes. It's like that's the cherry on the icing, and you can sense that in his demeanour. He's thoroughly frustrated at the whole thing. I'd say they're all in shell shock. Then there's also Kyle Walker Gate, which is equally kind of in the ether after the game. Roy Keane at half-time in No Doubts.
Would you have given a red card for this?
Red card. Yeah, to Walker. This is, you don't mind a bit of this. This is going to happen in the game, a bit of argy-bargy, of course. But I look at it, he's obviously been blocked. But, like, Walker... We're talking about what?
So there's the initial foul.
Of course, it's a foul. It's a free kick, and that's fine. Hoyland's not happy, and that's fine. And he goes over. How can Walker must be embarrassed. He must be embarrassed to go down like that. An experienced player. Listen, this here contact. Look at this. I don't know the guy, and I'm embarrassed for him.
He's better than that.
He is.
He's better than that.
Is he? Not so sure.
He is better than that.
Not so sure.
It's quite embarrassing. That.
Yeah.
He's better than that. No, he's not. No, I think he's better than that. It was a disgrace. And it was so stupid. Like, there's cameras on you.
Yeah,
it's just not going to fly anymore. This is so... Like, Kyle Walker's living in 2015, where you go head-to-head and hit the deck.
Yeah, we've had this chat before, like last time with Gary. Now, I know there was about set pieces and stuff, but it's just getting used to the new rules. I mean, as I said, they're not that new.
Cameras.
They've been around for a while.
Oh, it's such a bad look. Like, he's a senior player. He's supposed to be leading them out of this in a certain way. Yeah. Not that way.
Didn't Hoyland have some poem then on Instagram or something?
Well, you're a wordsmith, Dan. You can give me the verdict. I mean, I don't know. He's doing his best here. Manchester's red, violets are blue, said Rasmus Hoyland on Instagram. What a brilliant performance. But the Oscar goes to... ...
To me, right, okay, listen, the content, you could say it's average, but it's like doing a match report. He got it out there pretty close to deadline. Like, you know what I mean? It was out pretty quickly. His
agent.
He did, well, how quickly, I'm trying to think, like, did he do it himself? I did look back at something. I wouldn't be a follower of his Instagram post, but I look back, he does do the odd sort of interesting things. So, maybe it was him. Maybe he is sitting on the coach. I mean, again, we have this sort of tunnel vision view of footballers, but generally, like Scandinavian, Nordics, they chat freely to the media, they're relaxed. Like, maybe this is his own content. So I think he got it out there quickly.
Yeah.
But then again, he did get the pictures. That's the thing. It's the access to it. Do you ever notice, like, you'd hear this from photographers and stuff, like footballers, they don't get the photos with like the sports file branding on it or like the info branding or the photographer. I mean, they would have ways of getting the proper still images, the good stuff for the Instagram. So maybe it was a team effort, but I mean, like, the whole episode was bizarre. Like, and maybe you can psychoanalyze it and say that's just a team that's reaching, they're desperate, or it's just an instinctive, stupid decision. But I guess Kyle Walker might have that in his locker.
The big story, we'll talk more to Gary about Manchester City, obviously. The big story from Manchester United point of view, as well as winning, is obviously watching in real time Ruben Amorim try and reshape this very toxic dressing room. And so Exhibit A yesterday was the dropping of Marcus Rashford and Alejandro Garnacho from the squad entirely. Now, afterwards, obviously, this was the big talking point, and pre-game as well. He was at pains to point out that this is not a disciplinary issue. It's not, something has not happened here. Marcus Rashford has not gone to Belfast and stayed on again for several days. This is more of a general, I'm looking at your behaviour across the board and I don't like it situation.
Ruben, you made a very bold call leaving Marcus and Alejandro out the squad altogether. Could I ask why that was?
It's important to say why. It was not a disciplinary thing. Next week, next game, new life. They are fighting for the places, but for me it's important the performance in training, the performance in game, the way you dress, the way you eat, the way you engage with the teammates, the way you push your teammates. Everything is important in our context in the beginning of Sunday when we want to change a lot of things, when people in our club are losing their jobs. We have to put the standards really high, and for that they have to fight for the place in the team. And today the team proved that we can leave anyone outside the squad. You can manage to win if you play together.
I think Manchester United fans are practically swooning at everything Amorim says. The way they dress, the way they eat, the way they engage with teammates, I suspect that extends to staff.
Yeah.
I felt Keane on the television coverage mentioned how they speak to staff in a very pointed way. I'm sure he still has some contact at Carrington and the club generally. And then for Amorim to rope in people losing their jobs, you know, you wonder at times how connected the dressing room are to what's gone on at the wider at the club more generally. So the interesting thing though is they trained on Sunday morning, Rashford and Garnacho, and Amorim made a point of attending the training session. So this was not a you're out in the cold, you're training with the reserves, I'm just looking through you forevermore. Almost trying to nurse them through this very public dropping. Like, let's come back into the fold. If you're in any way willing, come back into the fold. So I think on every front, he has managed it spectacularly well, including the PR, because it would be tempting. This is a manager in the biggest job of his life. He's still in his 30s. He has never faced media questioning like this. Be very tempting to try to shut up shop, or to not know how to handle it, or to say, listen, that's a private matter, or where, you know, I'm not commenting on that, or, you know, just dodge it. Instead, the confidence to lay out in very clear terms what's happened here, I think is the right decision. Reflects really well on him. I think this guy's starting to get a hold of this place in a very impressive fashion.
No, it does. I mean, I think the comments are great. The bringing in the stuff of people losing their jobs. I mean, obviously, that does still throw a little bit of the scrutiny back on, like, his employers have done this, you know.
Yeah.
People who've hired him on a good deal. But I think you spoke well. Are people as impressed if the game had just finished 1-0 and that hadn't happened yesterday? Like, what's the discussion then? Is it the same? Maybe it is the same. I suspect there probably still would be a lot of, you know, support for that point, because I think, you know, I don't think people realistically are expecting a huge amount from the rest of the season, and wouldn't mind if the rest of the season was used to flush out whatever you need to flush out. But I'm just saying, obviously, it's able to say it from a great position.
It is very helpful
authority
to win
at the end of it.
Yeah, it's very helpful to win the game when you take that gamble.
Like, there's a moral high ground that you almost naturally attain, you know, you assume with that. But it's a recurring discussion around the club. I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see the next couple of weeks, if they remain out in the cold. In very general terms, do you start to hear murmurs and noises? And there's always been sort of a feeling that it's been probably quite a leaky club, and you hear too much about, you know, player issues with stuff.
This is one of the accusations at Garnacho. Leaking team.
That's which is, I only sort of stumbled upon this the other day, and it's sort of a weird sort of internet aggregator site discussion, and you're sort of trying to unpick it, and you're reading, you know, screen grabs, and I don't know what to believe on certain sites anymore, but it would appear anyway that his name is wrapped up with something there. So, and I suppose Rashford has faced questions in the past. So, I think it's a classic thing. Like, if it works, it works. I think you have to get a reaction. I think the broader problem with Manchester United, as we've discussed generally, is that people want someone to go in and clear out a dressing room, and it's a great thing to say, but it's modern football. It's like hard to do that. It's hard to do that at certain clubs. So, you could do it. You could do it easy at Liverpool, where the players are running out of contract, but there just happen to be good ones. The problem with Manchester United is often the ones you don't want to keep are tied into long-term deals, which make them really hard to shift. So that's a big managerial challenge.
More on that in just a moment. Away from the Etihad, it's worth running through the rest of the weekend before we talk to Gary Breen. So Chelsea are within 2 points of Liverpool all of a sudden. They beat Brentford 2-1. That was a late kick-off last night. It felt all a little bit after the Lord Mayor's show, but significant nonetheless. They're within 2 points. This after Liverpool, 10-man Liverpool were held by Fulham at Anfield on Saturday. That was a 2-2 draw. So 2-point lead, still in a great position with a game in hand, but 4 points dropped across their last 2 games, Liverpool. We had 2 managerial sackings in one weekend. Russell Martin at Southampton is gone. 5-0 defeat to Spurs. 5 goals conceded in the first half, probably really rubber stamped that decision, I would think. Kamikaze football again. So he is gone, 38 years of age. And then Gary O'Neill at Wolves also gone. Wolves lost 4 in a row. There was not the same sense of hopelessness about their performances in many cases, not the same sense of trouncing. Like they lost 2-1 to Ipswich at the weekend. They lost 2-1 to West Ham the week before. But obviously a precarious situation. So Gary O'Neill gone, Russell Martin gone. Elsewhere, reality bites for Ruud van Nistelrooy. 4-0 defeat for Leicester away to Newcastle. Anthony Gordon amongst those who was very good for Newcastle. And then honourable mention for top 4, Nottingham Forest, who beat Aston Villa 2-1. Forest having the kind of season Villa had aspired to have in the league. So they are top 4 ahead of Manchester City. Emi Martinez, by the way, with one of the great saves. Ashley Williams at Match of the Day called it the greatest save he had ever seen. And then he duly went and spilled for the first goal. So that was the life of a keeper born out. But Nottingham Forest flying, they're in 4th after beating Aston Villa 2-1. So that's about where we are. Happy to say Gary Breen is with us. Hello.
Hello, lads. How are you?
We are very well. What's your hunch on this Garnacho-Rashford situation based on what you've seen from those two in recent weeks or months or years, and based on what Ruben Amorim had to say yesterday?
I'm being so impressed with Amorim in terms of how he's handling this situation, because I would always argue that players want discipline. They make out they don't, but you do. What you want to know is that there's a line. But it's a line that if anyone crosses, there'll be repercussions. That line doesn't move. And it's just that consistency of leadership. And we're seeing it already from Amorim in 2 of the kind of most high-profile players in a really average Manchester United team. Their qualities have been elevated to beyond what they actually are. And what I love so much about it, Joe, was the fact that he said, they're not here this week, but it's a clean slate next week and we start again. Now, what that does is it gives those players an opportunity to toe the line and to really put in the effort that's required to play for a club like Manchester United. But what it also does, it gives them enough rope to hang themselves if they don't do it. He'll look at it and say to them, listen, I've given you every opportunity. I didn't just get rid of you straight away because I didn't like what I saw. I gave you that time to understand how I want to work as a manager, how this club's going to go forward. And if you want to be part of it, brilliant. If you don't, then you just go by the wayside. And I think it sends out a brilliant message to the rest of that squad when they've not had that for so long. Ultimately, you'd think it's since maybe Ferguson's leadership. And then on top of that, then a brilliant win yesterday, not in terms of performance, no, but a win that just allows them to feel good about themselves in the build up to this next week. Yeah. I've been so impressed with him.
Yeah. And by all accounts, the reporting is they were training on Sunday morning, but Amorim went along to that session. So
brilliant. Yeah.
They weren't sent out to Siberia. He's trying almost to bring them with him if he can. And the fact that it's not some big issue, it's not, we mentioned earlier, Rashford going to Belfast for a couple of days and being late or not present at training. He's talking about small things, the way you're dressing, the way you're engaging with other players, what you're eating. That's almost refreshing as well, that like it hasn't taken something very serious for him to act.
No, it isn't. And these little things, you kind of add them up and you think, well, they don't make a massive difference in the grand scheme of things in terms of results, but they do. They absolutely do, in trying to create a culture that enables you then to go on and win games. And you mentioned about Rashford and his timekeeping, but what about even Garnacho, like liking tweets that are critical of Eric Ten Hag and things like that? And you're thinking, how on earth are players getting away with this? And what I would hope, certainly looking at it from the outside looking, is that now that the kind of rules have been set, the senior players can enforce them within the changing room where the manager can't really come in, as opposed to it just being what looked like a free-for-all as such. I think he's looked at the scenario at Manchester United, and when you think about how impressive he's been as a young manager, you expect those type of guys to get an opportunity at a massive club, and he has got that. He's got that at Manchester United. There's no doubt about that. But the team and squad he's inherited, he must be thinking, this is way below what I thought it would be.
What about the game then?
Well, the game was two teams of reduced status, really, in terms of it wasn't particularly good. Nothing really seemed to be happening. You felt when City got that goal from a set piece, that kind of deflected short corner routine from De Bruyne, a brilliant header. Again, United being vulnerable to not being able to defend them situations particularly well. But they stayed in the game. That was what was so impressive. And of course, the shining light. If ever there's an example then to say to the likes of Rashford and Garnacho, well, listen, this is the standard I'm looking for from Amad Diallo. He was absolutely brilliant. And then to get the winning goal the way he did was just incredible. It was an amazing end to that football match.
Yeah. The staying in the game aspect is a really significant one to mention, because I mean they haven't always done that. The other thing I'd like to get your sense of, and you can shoot it down or not, but I thought we saw it away to Arsenal, and I thought again we saw it yesterday. This notion that somehow Manchester United were immune to a manager being able to enforce a pattern of play on them. I was almost starting to think there must be just something, some kind of force field. They just can't do it. And yet, Amorim in no time, there are patterns there. Like you're suddenly looking at players who do know what they're meant to be doing. Like there's small examples. There was a moment it just jumped out to me because they don't usually do it, as opposed to it being some great advancement in the game, whereby Martinez was in possession and Dalot, the left wing back, sprints back to get in a position to get the ball, takes it, feeds it off to someone else, but then knows he has to get back up the pitch, and he takes Kyle Walker with him. And there was a kind of clarity about Dalot's movement, and I thought that is new with this team. And also, because they're not here, there and everywhere and doing their own thing, all of last season there was like this donut in the middle of midfield, these kind of gaping holes. They're not there as much. So very, very quickly, like again, I don't want to overstate things. They're not doing things that other teams aren't doing in their sleep. But for Manchester United, it's almost a quantum leap.
That's huge. It really is. And you're right. There are triggers throughout the pitch, and it's so evident seeing it. And even in that midweek game against Pilsner, where they didn't play particularly well. And this team has always been, this Manchester United team in recent years has always been about moments. So there are brilliant moments of quality that kind of like stand out. But he's trying to create a team that's collectively good, as opposed to relying on individuals. And there are people now who are starting to look like who he will go forward with, the likes of Højlund at centre forward, who is still young, still raw. But Mazraoui, what a brilliant signing he has been in terms of value for money. Ugarte, of course, he's played with him. And of course, Diallo. But there are many more who are kind of understanding what's required within that. And you just feel like, as much as people are critical of Bruno and his captaincy, he never shirks the responsibility in terms of trying to affect the game. And at times, he probably runs around too much, vacates positions and leaves his team vulnerable. But I think that was a result of being in a bad team and trying to like stir some things up and trying to get the game going. But now, if he feels that the team know what they're supposed to be doing, I think he can be even more effective. I know at times it can be about perception, but I just think he looks a natural fit, Amorim. I genuinely do. I know it's so early, and I know it's a massive club in terms of the problems that he will face. But even the way he says about there's a storm coming, and he was so honest, and we keep saying this, we said this, and it feels like we're saying it quite a lot in recent months with these new managers, be it Heimer with Ireland or Slot with Liverpool and Amorim with United. It's so refreshing. Just tell us what we're seeing and tell us how you're going to fix it. And I genuinely believe it's a positive for Manchester United. I do.
He said as well, he thinks Maguire in the middle of a three, he's perfect for that role. Is that right, or is that going a step too far?
No, because his weaknesses are protected by players with a bit more mobility on the outside. I'm not sure whether or not De Ligt is that guy, but maybe it might be Euro. But did you see there was a moment in the game where he absolutely manhandled Haaland? Haaland went to run and he was like a bully back there, and he was really had a good presence. And as much as people talk about and be critical of Maguire, he's got good passing range. He can make passes short and long. So that maybe bodes well in terms of that wing-back system. So, listen, the problem you have is that we get so frustrated with these players who have continually failed with Manchester United, and a new manager comes in, they get another chance. But I do think it's important that he does look at it and think, well, listen, I know he hasn't particularly worked out under the previous manager, but it may well work out under this manager within this system that's organised and gives all those players some protection where they didn't have it before.
Yeah. It's kind of a graveyard, Manchester United, for players who come on the scene and have a bright moment. I mean, I don't know, Makeda was like a particularly one-off moment, but even Januzaj getting a 5-year contract, and he's the answer, and Martial, maybe he's the answer. Garnacho, this is the one. So now Ahmad has stepped into that breach. Does this look a bit more sustainable to you, especially with this manager?
But did you hear what the manager said, though, Joe? He said about Ahmad, he said, OK, let's take it easy. He's done great, but he's a young player, and this club has a history of overbilling our young players. Right. Let's just let him develop. And I'm thinking straight away, let's just see, because it's brilliant now. But in terms of getting where Manchester United need to be, can he be the one who sustains it? You hope he does. So it's an absolutely incredible story, his life. And to see him winning the game like that yesterday was just such a lovely moment. Yeah. I'm not, obviously not for people who're not particularly United fans, but it was incredible. But I do look at the scenario, and I think that it's a healthy situation now at Manchester United. It's just that they've got so many problems to solve.
I'm the manager and I'm not good enough. Simple as that, said Pep Guardiola. That's 8 defeats and 11 for City now. Can we let's take a sideways route into the City performance. Would you in the dressing room say to Kyle Walker, what are you doing? You're embarrassing all of us with that. Or is that kind of, hey, listen, worth the attempt to try and get him a red card? I've no problem with that, Kyle.
No, well, listen, he's a serial winner, but that was embarrassing. That was so bad. And we kind of covered the Liverpool game midweek against Girona, and you're just seeing the Liga players. Every time there was contacts, there was screams, there was yelps, and you're thinking, don't let this seep into the Premier League. And I know you've got to be cute as a defender in terms of taking the contact, or forwards taking the contact, winning frees, but he must have been so embarrassed, even looking back on that, because that was just woeful. What a brilliant comeback that was by Højlund afterwards, with his tweet to say about, and the Oscar goes to.
Gary, how did they get done so badly for the second goal? Like, if you're analysing that afterwards from a City perspective, because there must be a massive psychological element to it that they're just shell shocked.
Yeah.
It's just one run. I mean, like, it's a nice pick, and it's an amazing first touch. I'm not taking anything away from the finish, but the genesis of the whole thing is sort of like, at any level, you'd hate to concede that type of goal.
Yeah, it's just how fragile they are, Dan. And it started we were commentating on a game against Feyenoord when they're 3-0 up and they just collapsed by one bad back pass by Vardiol, and then you could actually physically see them just absolutely melting and panicking. And we're talking about arguably some of the best players we've ever seen. It's remarkable how the confidence levels are so low. But you're right. But even the kind of the penalty. And you would not. This is what's incredible. If you go back to it initially, Diallo really breaks out to press I think it's Diaz or one of the centre backs on the ball that makes him pass to the right. You'd never have got that from Rashford, that desire to close down. And as a result, the panic sets in. The short back pass. He's clever enough to draw the penalty, but then the run the run for the winning goal is incredible, because he runs and attacks from out to in with real intensity, recognises he may well have gone earlier than the pass, so he bends his run back to create the space to go again. And you're thinking, that's the type of run you expect from a top elite level centre forward. It was so impressive. And then the touch and then the finish. I mean, it was just it was a wow moment.
But just to go back to the City thing, and maybe you're right, probably being a little bit unkind to Diallo. It's not something anyone can do. Like, it was an amazing run and finish. But if a malaise sets into a dressing room like that, particularly if you've been together for a long time, how do you get it back? I don't know if you've ever been in a comparable situation, but how do you actually... I mean, you don't have the time to reset because there's games every couple of days. So how can you get that back?
I don't know. It's so difficult because there's no doubt in their technical ability. And even in that game, I was looking at their decision-making wasn't particularly good. Their pressing was virtually non-existent in terms of the levels, because that's something that people underestimate about City, how good they were at pressing teams. They were brilliant without the ball. But even that seems to have dropped the level. And you just wonder whether or not it's just confidence. Even these top-class players need that bit of confidence to play. I didn't feel as if a lot of the players wanted the ball in tight areas that you normally associate with Manchester City. And quite often you saw the likes of Walker at right back hitting long balls forward. You saw Haaland clearing the box one time, just booting it long. And you're thinking, this is so unrecognisable. So it's just amazing that we're talking about, serial winners, arguably the best ever manager, and they've just got to this situation. It's incredible how momentum builds in a positive way when things are going great, but in a negative way, it's just they just cannot seem to stop themselves imploding.
Oh, it's extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. 16 games in, they're behind Nottingham Forest. I mean, a gazillion to 1 at the start of the season. I know you covered the game at Anfield on Saturday for Premier Sports, 2-2 draw. Liverpool Fulham, they had Trent, Gomez, Van Dijk, Robertson. It was Curtis Jones with Gravenberch and Szoboszlai ahead of them. And then it was Salah, Diaz through the middle, Gakpo left-hand side. So they came back twice from a goal down, Salah and then Jota off the bench. He had missed 11 games. Brilliant goal, touch and turn, just a classy footballer. So Arne Slot afterwards, Gary, said that it was with 10 men, an outstanding performance. Robertson was sent off, an outstanding performance with 10 men. And Fulham are a very decent side. They've now kept Arsenal and Liverpool in check. So in isolation, it's fine. I suppose similar, you could say similar about the Newcastle 3-3 draw. In isolation, under the circumstances, fine. But suddenly, 4 points gone in 2 games.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. And when they were 3-2 up at Newcastle, I thought, well, this is a brilliant result. This really sends a message out in terms of come from behind, win and see it out. And then the mistake by Kelleher lets them off. There's 2 points gone. But this was totally different, Joe. This was an incredible performance. And they actually had a massive chance right at the end to win it.
Yeah.
But a couple of players took the shot on rather than just passing it square to Salah. He'd have had tap in with a minute or so to go. It was everything that he complained about in terms of the midweek Champions League game against Girona, in terms of not having that pressing. And he came out, and we're talking about accountability with Amorim at Manchester United. We're getting it with Slot as well, where he's naming and shaming these players if he doesn't think the standards that they've set are being adhered to, then they're dropping below. And even in that Girona game in midweek, you did feel they weren't particularly pressing well enough. They felt relatively comfortable. And any normal circumstances, you probably expect the manager to say, well, listen, it's been a tough fixture list at the moment. We've got to win with delight. But no, he came out and he said, no, that's nowhere near good enough. Well, he'd have been delighted with it, because there was periods in that game where you couldn't even tell that they were down to 10 men. It was incredible how they were pressing, the energy that they were having. They had 61% possession. They created 16 attempts to Fulham's 12. Now, Fulham are a very good team under Bernardo Silva in terms of how good they are with their pace out wide. And the accountability as well. And this is something I had not really seen before. They were nailing Trent if he weren't staying with his runners. He was culpable for one of the goals in terms of not staying with Robertson running from left back.
Yeah.
And Van Dijk tore a strip off him. And now I can't really remember him ever doing that to him in terms of how lethargic he can be coming back and getting back into defensive shape. But he's so demanding on them, Slop. I've been so impressed with what they're doing. And I love to see that. I love to see that there's now where the players and the manager are demanding of other players. Before, people under Klopp, certainly, it was like, well, no, Trent is giving us so much going that way that we kind of let him off the hook for what he's doing backwards. Slop's having none of that. And even Trent saying that, he wants to arguably be he wants to be the best right back in the world defensively. Oh, he's got a long way to go because he was so poor defensively.
Yeah, it was really poor. I mean, he didn't stop the cross coming in for the first goal. Not ideal, not criminal offence either. But the second goal, the Robinson goal, I would suspect why Van Dijk tore strips off him in particular there. I take your point about the atmosphere Slot's creating, and I dare say that's the main impetus. But there are times where Trent he makes bad decisions, or he doesn't see things, or he steps forward when he should step back. So I think there's probably an understanding from his teammates that there is a weakness there. But in this case, on Saturday, he knew that he saw the run, he felt the run. Like there was no excuse not to go there, and he put out his hand to try and stop Robinson. So that's not one where it's like, oh, geez, Trent, he's not always alive in those moments. This was a case of you saw the run, you tried to go with the run, but you didn't try hard enough. That's unacceptable.
Well, I would argue that that's what you do see. I think he's a very intelligent footballer. I think he does see it. I just don't think he has any determination to run with it, and that's a frustration certainly for me, because he's got. I've never seen such a gulf between what a player is brilliant at and not so good at. That it's so vast in terms of how average he is as a top right back at a club like Liverpool in terms of defending. And the frustration thing as well is that he keeps drifting into centre midfield when Fulham are compact and narrow. There's no space. He won't get the ball there. And I'm looking at him thinking, just drop out into right back. And there's a simple pass to Liverpool to get outside of Fulham. And then he's got space and time to put those devastating balls that he puts in. And he's done a couple of them. He is unbelievable when he's in that pocket on that right-hand side. But wise people have convinced him that he can go into midfield because he actually can't take the ball in the half-turn. He can't play in traffic. He just can't. It's no kind of slur on him. That's elite level midfielders who do that, can play on a half turn in traffic, can pop the ball up like Gravenberch has proved to be at number 6. Trent can't do that. So I don't understand why he just don't stay in that right back slot, because the delivery he puts in is just it's borderline undefendable. It's that good what he does, and it just frustrates me so much.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. So that's Liverpool. Under the circumstances, fine. And they're still 2 points clear Chelsea with a game in hand. Arsenal, Everton, just to mention, by the way. So I thought this was an interesting stat over the weekend. Where do you think Arsenal are in the league table, goals from open play?
Oh, yes. I would say they're well, Dan. That's the one game I haven't caught up on yet, because a 0-0 draw is not really the one that sucks you into watching before all these other great games. So I'll catch up with that later today.
We won't dwell on it. To be fair, they did create chances in this game. They just didn't take them. But they are 9th from open play. 18 goals, whereas Chelsea are top of the heap, actually, 27. Spurs, 26. Liverpool, 25. Brentford, weirdly, are the 4th most free-scoring team from open play in the league with 24. And then Pearl, Gary O'Neill and Wolves are 22. But yeah, Arsenal are 18, so that's their issue. On Southampton, Spurs beat them 5-0, 5 goals in the first half. Russell Martin has been sacked, 13 defeats in 16 games. Dan and I touched on this a couple of weeks ago after the 5-1 defeat to Chelsea, where, I mean, in his press conference afterwards, you almost felt, God, that was an amazing performance against Chelsea. It was they just stuck to their philosophy so brilliantly. Yeah. Like there just comes a certain point where that doesn't cut the mustard anymore. Do you think Southampton have done the right thing here?
Yeah, I do. And this is the theme that I've kind of said about United, Liverpool today, accountability from whoever it comes from. But the hierarchy at Southampton have looked at the scenario and thought, this philosophy is being exposed by the results. Is as simple as that. And you kind of worry about the precedent was set last year with Company playing that way, and his team were just losing, and they weren't going to win, but it was about Company's philosophy. And then his playing career affords him an opportunity then at Bayern Munich when he's not really, I don't think, protected his players well enough in terms of keeping them up. This is a scenario with Russell Martin, is his philosophy, and now people look about it and say, well, listen, he got him promoted last year, but you only have to look at his career, Russell Martin, even as a young manager. MK Dons, he finished 19th that first season, 13th the next, gets a move to a bigger club in the Championship on the back of that, to Swansea, finishes 15th in the first season, 10th in the next. So this is not a philosophy that's blowing everyone away. This is not something, he's not a serial winner underneath this philosophy. And I think even going to Southampton, which is, you're always so far ahead of everyone else when you got the team that's just been relegated. If you can sort out all the kind of the fallout from being relegated, you should be left with a real strong pot of player, and you've got some financial muscle to add to it, and you've got some players who come through the ranks as well. So I just looked at it and thought, I'm looking at this scenario and thinking, this just can't continue. It can't continue. And this is a manager who said live and die by his philosophy. But I think even the supporters, even on the back of what was a really enjoyable season for last year, they quickly turned on him. There was banners already before that game started.
Yeah. Gary, before you go, the World Cup draw. So Dan, Heimer Helgrimsson has described it as neutral, which I think probably sums it up. So what's really amazing, Dan, is, and I'll bring Gary in on this, like I don't know how the players feel about this, but this really is just like a blaze across 3 months. I as a fan, I don't love it. I like that 18-month journey. So we will go 3 double headers. So September, Hungary at the Aviva, and then Armenia Armenia, away. Then October will be away to either Portugal or Denmark, Armenia at home, and then November, Portugal or Denmark at home, and we'll finish Hungary away. I mean, Dan, if... God, you do your hamstring in September, you're going to miss the entire World Cup qualification.
Oh, yeah. No, it could be. It's like a 10-week campaign, basically. And look, we've had this, unfortunately, under Stephen Kenny. There's been a couple of campaigns that have almost been over after a week. But then you maybe had to wait a couple of months. So, I think of the Luxembourg one after losing in Serbia that time. That was March, and then the next games were September.
You want the pain over quickly here.
But this campaign could be over in a week. It could be alive in a week.
Yeah.
I mean, the way the fixtures have worked out, with Ireland at home to Hungary first on a Saturday in the Aviva, and then away to Armenia on a Tuesday. It's unfortunate. When you see Armenia in, you think you don't want to play Armenia away early. All the records show that. Armenia just generally can be tough at home at the start of the campaign, and then they can fade as it goes on. I know it's a massive national stereotype, but the facts actually back it up in terms of their results.
Well, it's often true with the weakest teams in the group. They're going to have a bit more of a rattle first.
Yeah, and they have a particular form for that. And the last time Ireland went there was the start of a Nations League campaign, and they were fired up for it. But the most recent campaign, they lost at home to Faroes in November at the end of it. So. Right. It's a tough start, but in some ways it's a great start. It's a real, I sometimes think you see Irish teams over the years, and this is the difference with this World Cup campaign now. It's almost like you need to bring that playoff mentality to it, like you're playing France and Paris mentality to it, where you're like, okay, every week here, it has that magnitude, particularly when you're in a 4-team group, where again, teams will feel, that's what Hamer's point, he feels like teams will take points off each other, although Portugal did take 30 from 30 in the Euros campaign, so they don't, they can steamroll on occasion, and Martinez at Belgium did a little bit of that as well.
Sorry, just state the obvious, I never bothered to check, this is top 2 go through?
No, the top 1 qualifies, and then the second goes into a very enlarged playoff system now that will have 16 teams in it, which will be 4 pools of 4 with a semi-finals and a final, like the Euros ones we have now.
Bloody hell.
But second is very second is.
I thought we might sneak through.
I know FIFA have made the World Cup bigger, Joe, but a 4-team group or 2 going through is
generous,
a dreamland that doesn't exist. But a playoff is attainable. The thing is, the World Cup, we always have this thing, and in recent years, World Cup's almost impossible to qualify for, because there's going to be 13 teams and that's it. Only 13 teams can qualify. But if you look at it now with the way they've set it up this time, I mean, there's going to be over 20 teams involved in the playoffs or qualifying automatically. So it's not a massive reach to think Ireland could be in the playoff discussion. And the mad thing about it is, if Ireland beat Hungary at home on the first day, which is a result that they are capable of getting, I have no doubt they're capable of getting that if they do everything right, and then back it up by going to Armenia to win. After a week, you're looking at it going, it's going to be hard to knock that team out of a playoff. But the flip side of that is, you take 1 point from 6 and it's almost game over after a week. So if Caoimhín Kelleher or hopefully Bazunu will be back as an alternative, but if you have a big injury to a big player at that time, your whole campaign, but equally that can extend to the other teams in the group as well.
Very much so. I'm conscious we have a man who knows about qualifying for a World Cup with us, so talk to us.
Well, I agree with Dan. It's a worry in one aspect in terms of the Nations League was a 10-week campaign. But I do like the fact that we'll have had our pre-season under our players' belts and stuff like that. So there's not those, those kind of sticky games in the summer where the season ends and then you've got to kind of find some momentum. That's found us out quite a lot. Listen, I probably agree with Heimer there. It could have been worse. It could have been better. It could have been worse. But I don't look at that and think, oh no, we're well up against that. I certainly think as that number 2 seed, Hungary, that's not something that terrifies me. But then again, it's up to us to kind of get the result. But it is so important, as you highlighted there, that you do kind of get the campaign up and running. If I remember, for us qualifying, that was so important in terms of getting positive results early on, just to build the momentum.
If I offered you both 4 points from those first 2 games, Hungary at the Aviva and Armenia away, so a draw at the Aviva and a win in Armenia, would you jump at it?
It's a difficult one, because I think to qualify you have to win your home games. That's the big thing.
Well, this is all I'm offering.
No, I know, yeah, but I'm a dreamer, Joe. You know that. So I'm hoping for the 6 points. I'm going to wait until we get a bit closer. I may well take it off you in a couple of days in the build-up to those first 2 games.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Thanks, lads. Good luck.